He tourists in search of grand and beautiful. Scenery finds an embarrassment of riches in Colorado. Among so many attractions, he is at a loss which to choose, and having made a choice, he is frequently troubled with doubts as to the wisdom of his selection. Recognizing this fact, the passenger department of the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad, after a careful and thoughtful discussion of the situation, has decided to make a selection of a tour that shall embrace the most varied and picturesque scenery to be found on the line of any railroad in the world, included in a single trip at a moderate cost. The excursion around the circle presents all these advantages. It can be made comfortably in 4 days, and no portion of the journey has to be retraced, thus affording constant variety and keeping the interest of the tourist pleasurably excited to the end. It is a remarkable fact that this journey, if pursued in the line laid down in the following pages, is cumulative in its character. Like a well-constructed drama, the interest grows stronger and stronger with each stage of its progress, until the final scene, which is an overpowering climax of grandeur and majesty. The points of interest on the trip around the circle are practically innumerable. The observing tourist will discover many beauties and attractions, which are not described by the writer. No attempt has been made to include all that is worthy of mention. Only those scenes which are of transcendent interest have been touched upon, and in the pages which follow, the reader will only obtain a bird's-eye view of the tour. This being the case, the tourist can readily imagine what pleasure lies before him. In this instance, distance does not lend enchantment to the view. To penetrate the heart of the majestic mountains, to cross and recross the great rocky range, to gaze with breathless awe into the defiles of abysmal chasms, and to behold with reverent, upturned eyes the ancient summits of heaven-defying snow-crowned peaks, are privileges that familiarity can never make commonplace nor belittle. Such privileges are granted to the tourists around the circle, and with full confidence that he who takes the journey will find his brightest anticipations more than realized. This little book is placed before him, he journey around the circle on the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad, from Denver to Silverton, Silverton to Ouray, and return to Denver, or via the Denver and Rio Grande to Durango, thence over the Rio Grande Southern RR to Ridgway, and return to Denver, briefly described in the following pages, comprises more noted and magnificent scenery than any other trip of similar length in the known world, piercing the heart of the Rocky Mountains, crossing and recrossing the Great Divide between the Atlantic and Pacific slopes, penetrating 5 cagons, each of which is a world's wonder, and no two having the same characteristics, climbing 4 mountain passes by rail and 1 by stage, achieving grades of 211 feet to the mile, reaching heights 11,000 feet above the sea, penetrating gorges whose walls soar a half-mile in perpendicular cliffs above the track, traversing fertile and picturesque valleys watered by historic rivers, passing through Indian reservations and in sight of frontier cantonments of national troops, pausing in the midst of mining camps, where gold and silver and coal and copper are being taken from subterranean recesses. In a word, making the traveler familiar with peaks and plains, lakes and rivers, cagons and passes, mountains and mesas, with strange scenes in nature, aboriginal types of men, wonders of science, and novel forms of art. Surely no other journey of 1,000 miles can so instruct, entertain, entrance, and thrill the traveler as this trip around the circle. Every mile of the journey has its especial attraction. 1,000 objects of interest present themselves to view in rapid succession. 1,000 novel impressions photograph themselves upon the mind. 1,000 landscapes of wonderful and bewitching beauty beyond the power of pen or pencil, or brush or camera to depict, can be seen from the windows of the car. Colorado is a land of wonders, a land of surprises, a land of sharp and wonderful contrasts. Take Toltec Gorge as a central point, and with a radius of 200 miles describe a circle. Within the confines of that magic ring will be found more grand and wonderful scenery, accessible by rail than within any similar circle swept anywhere on the surface of the world. Pilgrimages are made across the seas to behold the beauties of some one famed object. The Via Mala attracts one, Mount Blanc another, the Colosseum a third, and the tourist, after all his great expenditure of time and money, comes away with one impression. It ought to be the fashion for Americans to see something of their own country before they rush across the ocean to gaze at the wonders of the old world. It is a good omen that many Americans appreciate this fact and are turning their attention to the unsurpassed scenery of their native land. The Via Mala is dwarfed into insignificance when compared with the Royal Gorge. The hundreds of peaks among the Rockies, reaching an altitude of over 14,000 feet, should compensate one for the solitary grandeur of Mount Blanc, while the ruins of the cliff dwellings tell of a race older than that which built the Colosseum. It would be impossible within the pages allotted for this book to give an adequate description of even half the noteworthy things to be seen in a journey around the circle. All that can be attempted is briefly to characterize a few of the most remarkable objects of interest, objects which deserve to rank with the greatest natural attractions of the world, and most of which have already become known as marvels, to behold which would amply repay a journey across the continent.